For 33 years, I was the reliable background noise while my sister, Kendall, starred in the main event. I accepted my role as the boring, steady daughter until a certified letter shattered that silence. It wasn't just the $15 million left to me by a relative I barely remembered. It was the realization that my parents hadn't just favored Kendall, they had been actively betting against me. Now, the quiet one was about to make a lot of noise. The fog in Seabrook Harbor did not roll in. It settled. It was a heavy gray blanket that muffled the sound of the Atlantic and turned the sharp edges of the world into soft, indistinct blurs. I loved it. I loved the way it hid things. For the last 5 years, this coastal town had been my hiding place, a sanctuary built from silence and the deliberate absence of drama. At 33, I had curated a life that could best be described as tidy. I worked as a project manager for a niche healthcare technology vendor, a job that required obsessive organization and very little emotional labor. I had a small apartment with a view of the marina, a rotation of 3 reliable friends who understood my need for sudden solitudes, and a car that I paid off 2 years early. My life was boring. That was the point. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, vibrating against the granite. I didn't need to look at the screen to know who it was. It was Sunday. Sunday was for updates. I picked it up. Gordon, my father. "Hi, Dad," I said, leaning against the counter and watching a fishing trawler disappear into the mist. "Ariana," he said. His voice was breathless, as if he had just run up a flight of stairs, though I knew he was likely sitting in his recliner in Briar Glen. "We were just talking about you." I braced myself. Talking about me usually meant comparing me. "Oh?" I asked. "Your sister is going through a transition," he said. It was his favorite word for Kendall's chaos. Transitions, seasons, journeys, never mistakes. She is moving out of that studio in the city. He continued, "The landlord is being unreasonable about the rent increase. She needs a landing pad, just for a month or 2. I closed my eyes. I knew where this was going. I had the spare room. I had the stability. I was the landing pad. "I cannot have her here." "Dad," I said, keeping my voice flat. "My lease does not allow long-term guests. It is family." "Ariana," he snapped, the breathlessness vanishing into irritation. "You always have a rule book handy, do you not? She is your sister. She is trying to get her wellness brand off the ground. She just needs a little runway." "I am not a runway," I said. "I am her sister, and I am working 50 hours a week. You are selfish," he said. It wasn't a shout. It was a statement of fact, delivered with the same casual certainty he used to discuss the weather. "Just like your mother says. You get comfortable, and you forget who helped you get there." I hung up. I did not slam the phone down. I just pressed the red button and set it back on the counter. My hands were shaking, a tiny tremor that lived in my fingers whenever I spoke to them. I had paid for my own college. I had paid for my own car. I had moved out at 22 and never asked them for a dime. But in the Price family mythology, I was the taker, and Kendall, who had burned through 3-degree programs and 5 figures of their retirement savings, was the victim of circumstance. I poured the rest of my coffee down the sink. The peace of the morning was gone, replaced by the old, familiar ache of being the wrong daughter. 2 days later, I was in my car, driving south to Briar Glen. It was Elise's birthday. My mother turned 60 this year, and attendance was mandatory. If I skipped it, the narrative would shift from "Ariana is selfish" to "Ariana is cruel," and I did not have the energy to fight a 2-front war. The house in Briar Glen was beautiful. It was a sprawling colonial with black shutters and a lawn that looked manicured with scissors. It was a house designed to be looked at, not lived in. As I walked up the driveway, I saw Kendall's car parked at a haphazard angle, 2 wheels on the grass. I took a deep breath, fixed a smile on my face, and opened the door. The smell hit me first. Roast chicken, expensive perfume, and underlying tension. They were in the dining room. Gordon was pouring wine, and Elise was sitting at the head of the table, looking radiant and tight. as if her skin was pulled back by invisible clips. Kendall was mid-story. She was always mid-story. So I told him, "If you cannot handle my ambition, you certainly cannot handle my heart," Kendall said, gesturing with a fork. She looked stunning. Of course, she always did. She had the kind of blonde, effortless beauty that made people want to forgive her before she even apologized. "Ariana," Elise said, not standing up. "You made it. We were betting on whether traffic would stop you." "Happy birthday." "Mom," I said, placing a gift bag on the sideboard. It was a silk scarf. Italian. Expensive. She would hate it. "Sit," Gordon said. "Kendall is telling us about her new vision." I sat. I unfolded my napkin. I became the furniture. Kendall turned her blue eyes toward me. They were bright, glassy, and predatory. "Ariana." "You look tired," she said. "I am fine," I said. "Just a busy quarter at work. Project management," Kendall said, letting the words roll around in her mouth like a bad taste. "It sounds so structured. I do not know how you do it. I would die if I knew exactly what tomorrow looked like." "It pays the bills," I said, taking a sip of water. Kendall laughed. It was a light, tinkling sound. "Oh, Ari, you are always so practical. It is cute, really. You are like the beige paint in a waiting room, reliable, necessary, but nobody stops to look at it." The room went silent for a beat. Then, Gordon chuckled. "That is a good one. Kenny," he said. "Beige. That is exactly it." Elise smiled, patting Kendall's hand. "She is just grounded." "Gordon, someone has to be the anchor." I sat there, freezing. It wasn't the insult that hurt. I had been called boring 1,000 times. It was the laughter. It was the way my father looked at me, eyes crinkling with amusement, as if my mediocrity was the family's favorite inside joke. They didn't hate me. They just didn't see me as a person. I was a prop. I was the straight man in Kendall's comedy routine. "I need the bathroom," I said, standing up too quickly. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Don't be sensitive." "Ariana?" Elise called after me. It was just a joke. I locked the bathroom door and stared at myself in the mirror. My face was pale. My eyes were dark. I looked nothing like them. I turned on the faucet and let the cold water run over my wrists, counting backward from 10. This was the deal. I endured this for 3 hours. And then I bought myself 3 months of silence. That was the exchange rate. I went back out. I ate the chicken. I smiled at the stories. I hugged my mother goodbye. "You should call more," Elise whispered in my ear as I left, smelling of white wine and judgment. "We worry about you. You are so isolated out there by the water. I am happy." "Mom," I said. She pulled back and looked at me with pity. "Are you? Or are you just hiding?" I drove home in silence. I didn't turn on the radio. I just listened to the hum of the tires on the highway, telling myself that I was free. I was free because I didn't need them. I was free because I didn't ask for anything. But as I crossed the town line into Seabrook Harbor, I felt a heavy stone in my chest. They were right. I was hiding. I was hiding from the fact that no matter how far I ran, I was still waiting for them to love me. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. It was mixed in with a stack of junk mail and utility bills. It was thick, creamy envelope with the return address embossed in black ink. Hathaway and Rowe. Fiduciary Services. I didn't open it immediately. I assumed it was a mistake. I didn't know anyone named Hathaway or Rowe. I put it on the kitchen table and made tea. I changed into sweatpants. I fed the cat. Only when the apartment was silent did I pick up the letter opener. The paper inside was heavy, woven cotton bond. The letterhead was severe. "Dear Ms. Price, we are writing to inform you that you are the sole beneficiary of the Marlowe Price Irrevocable Trust, per the instructions of the grantor. The trust has reached its maturity date upon your 33rd year. Pending final identity verification and the execution of the enclosed release forms, the trust is prepared to disburse the full principal and accrued interest, totaling $15,420,000. I read the number again. $15 million. I sat down. The chair felt hard beneath me. The room seemed to tilt slightly to the left. I looked at the name, Marlowe Price. I searched my memory, digging through the sediment of childhood. Marlowe. A great aunt? A cousin? The name was a ghost. A whisper from a family reunion I had attended when I was 12 or 13. I remembered a smell of pipe tobacco and peppermint. I remembered a cane with a silver head. But $15 million? This was a scam. It had to be. People didn't just get $15 million from relatives they barely knew. I looked at the phone number at the bottom of the letter. It was a Boston area code. I picked up my phone and dialed. My hands were steady now. This was a problem to be solved. This was project management. Hathaway and Rowe. A woman's voice answered. I received a letter. I said, "My name is Ariana Price." There was a pause, then the sound of typing. "Put her through to Ms. Klein immediately," the voice said, sounding suddenly alert. A moment later, a new voice came on the line. It was low, raspy, and authoritative. "Ms. Price," the voice said, "I am Lydia Klein. I have been waiting for your call." "Is this real?" I asked. "I would not waste my stationery if it were not." Lydia said, "I can see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Do not tell anyone you are coming." "Why?" I asked. "Because," Lydia said, her voice dropping a decibel, "money changes people, but $15 million changes the people around them." The offices of Hathaway and Rowe were on the 42nd floor of a glass tower in downtown Boston. The view was dizzying. The harbor looked like a toy set from up here. Lydia Klein was a woman made of sharp angles. She wore a charcoal suit and glasses with thick black frames. She did not smile when I entered. She shook my hand with a grip that could crush walnuts. "Sit," she said. She pushed a folder across the mahogany desk. "Marlowe Price was your grandfather's estranged brother," Lydia said. "He made his money in shipping logistics in the 70s. He never married. He had no children. He died 12 years ago." "12 years?" I asked. "Why now?" "Because he did not want you to have the money when you were young." Lydia said, "He watched your family. He watched your parents. He believed that if you received this money while you were under their roof, it would not remain yours for long." I felt a chill run up my spine. "He watched them?" Lydia nodded. "He hired private observers. He knew about the dynamic. He knew about your sister. He set the trust to mature only when you turned 33, assuming that by then, you would have severed the necessary cords." She opened the folder. "The total amount is $15,420,318. She said, "It is clean. Taxes have been paid by the estate. It is yours. Ariana." I stared at the number on the page. It looked like a phone number. It didn't look like value. It looked like freedom. "But," Lydia said, leaning forward, "there is a complication." My stomach tightened. "Of course. Someone has been fishing," she said. "Fishing? 6 months ago. Our records department received a request for information regarding a Marlowe Price trust." She said, "The requester claimed to be you. They had your social security number. They had your mother's maiden name. They failed the security questions regarding the specific dates of Marlowe's death. So we denied the request, but they tried." "My parents?" I whispered. "Or someone close to them." Lydia said, "This tells me that they know the trust exists. They do not know the amount, and they do not know the beneficiary is exclusively you. They likely assume it is a family pot. If they find out you have this money, they will come for it." I thought of the dinner, the beige paint, the laughter. "Let them come," I said. "It is mine, legally." "Yes," Lydia said. "But families have ways of litigating that have nothing to do with the law. They use guilt. They use public pressure. They use exhaustion." She slid a document toward me. "This is a temporary non-disclosure agreement." She said, "It binds us, but it also serves as a reminder for you. Tell no one. Not yet. Verify your identity. Sign the papers. Let the wire hit your account. Then, you decide who needs to know." I signed. Before I left, Lydia handed me a small manila envelope. "Marlowe left this for you," she said. "It was in his personal effects box. I took the envelope. It was light. Ms. Price, Lydia said as I stood up. I suggest you freeze your credit today and change your passwords. All of them. I drove back to Seabrook Harbor in a daze. I stopped at a gas station and bought a coffee just to feel the transaction, to see if my debit card still worked, if I was still the same person. When I got home, I sat on the floor of my living room and opened the manila envelope. Inside was a photograph. It was a Polaroid, the colors shifting toward magenta with age. It showed a fairground. There was a man in a linen suit, Marlowe, presumably, standing next to a girl. The girl was me. I was maybe 14. I was wearing braces and a t-shirt that was too big for me. I looked awkward. I looked uncomfortable. But Marlowe was looking at me. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking down at me with an expression of intense, serious respect. I turned the photo over. On the back, in spidery blue ink, was a single sentence: "You deserve to be seen." I started to cry. It wasn't a sob. It was a sudden, sharp release of pressure. I sat there on the floor, clutching the photo, weeping for the 14-year-old girl who felt invisible. Marlowe had seen me. He had seen the way I shrank in that house. He had seen the way I was edited out of the family picture. And he had waited 19 years to hand me a sledgehammer. I wiped my face. I had work to do. I opened my laptop. I logged into the credit bureaus. I froze everything. Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. I changed my banking passwords to random strings of alphanumeric chaos that I wrote down in a notebook I hid inside a hollowed-out cookbook. I needed to tell someone. The secret was too big. It was expanding inside me, pressing against my ribs. I called Maya. Maya Rios had been my best friend since college. She was a cynical, brilliant nurse who had seen enough trauma to be unshakable. "Come over," I said. "Bring wine." Maya arrived in 20 minutes. She took one look at my face and locked the door behind her. "Who died?" she asked. "Nobody," I said. "Someone lived." I told her everything. I showed her the letter. I showed her the photo. Maya sat on my sofa, staring at the wall for a full minute. 15 million? She whispered, spoken out loud. It sounded dangerous. "Lydia thinks my parents know a trust exists." I said, "They tried to access it." "Of course they did," Maya said, her eyes narrowing. "They probably think it's for Kendall. They probably think Marlowe left a pot of gold to save the golden child." I nodded. "That is exactly what they think. You cannot tell them," Maya said. She grabbed my shoulders. "Ari, listen to me. You cannot tell them. Not until the money is in your account. And maybe not even then. They will eat you alive." "I know." I said. "No, you don't," she said. "You think you know. You think they are just narcissistic and annoying. But money this big? It turns people into sharks. If Kendall finds out you have $15 million while she is broke and hustling, she will burn your life down." "I am freezing my credit," I said. "Good," Maya said. "Get a security system. 2. And maybe a lawyer who isn't Lydia Klein. You need a shark of your own." We drank the wine. We planned. For the first time in my life, I allowed myself to dream. I could buy the apartment building. I could quit my job. I could travel. I could disappear. But I knew I couldn't disappear. Not yet. The week passed in a blur of paranoia. Every time my phone rang, I jumped. Every time an email pinged, I expected a lawsuit. I went to work. I sat in meetings about software integration. I nodded at spreadsheets. It felt surreal. I was sitting there worrying about a 3% variance in the budget while I had the GDP of a small island nation pending in a wire transfer. Friday night arrived. The fog was back, pressing against the windows. I was chopping vegetables for a salad when I saw the notification on my phone. Missed call. Mom. My heart hammered. I hadn't spoken to her since the dinner. Then, a text message appeared. "We heard exciting news. Call us tonight." The knife slipped in my hand, nicking my thumb. I stared at the screen. The blood welled up, bright red. But I didn't feel it. We heard exciting news. They knew. How did they know? Lydia said the confidentiality was absolute. Had the bank leaked? Had the mailman talked? I grabbed a paper towel and wrapped my thumb. My breath was coming in short, shallow gasps. I wasn't ready. The money hadn't cleared yet. I was still vulnerable. The phone rang again. It wasn't Mom this time. It was Kendall. I stared at the screen. Kendall calling. If I didn't answer, they would show up. They would drive 2 hours and bang on my door. I knew them. They had no boundaries, only demands. I swiped green. I put the phone to my ear. Hello? My voice sounded strange, tight and high. Ari! Kendall screamed. It was a scream of delight, but it scraped against my ear like glass. Oh my God. Ari! What is going on? I asked, feigning ignorance. Don't play coy with me. She laughed. It was that sugary, breathless laugh she used when she wanted something. We know. We know everything. You know what? I asked. About the trust, she said. About Marlowe. God, I cannot believe you didn't tell us. But it doesn't matter. We are just so relieved. Relieved? I asked. Yes, she said. Mom and Dad are crying. We are opening champagne. You need to come down here tomorrow. We have to celebrate. I said nothing. I held the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. And Ari, she added, her voice dropping just slightly, shifting from performative joy to business. Mom and Dad need to talk to you. There are some options we need to look at. For the structure. Before you sign anything. The word hung in the air. Options. They didn't just know about the money. They thought they had a say in it. I looked out the window at the fog. It wasn't hiding me anymore. The wolves had found the scent. I have to go. Kendall. I said, don't be silly. She said, we are family. This is a family win. Ari, we are all in this together. She hung up. I stood in the silence of my kitchen, the paper towel on my thumb turning red. A family win. No. I looked at the shadow of my reflection in the dark window. It wasn't a family win. It was a declaration of war. I refused to pick up the phone. I let it ring until the battery on my cell drained to 12%, and then I plugged it in and let it ring some more. I texted Kendall a single line. I am not discussing financial matters right now. It was a boundary. To my family, a boundary was nothing more than a challenge, a fence to be kicked down to see what was behind it. Saturday morning broke with a deceptive calm. The fog had lifted, leaving the harbor sparkling under a hard, bright sun. I was drinking coffee, trying to focus on a spreadsheet for work. When the text arrived from Elise, we were in the area looking at antiques. We are just 10 minutes away. Meet us at the Gilded Oar for lunch, 12:30. Do not be late. I stared at the screen. The Gilded Oar was the most expensive, most visible tourist trap in Seabrook Harbor. It was where people went to be seen, not to eat, and they were not in the area. Briar Glen was 2 hours away. They had driven 2 hours on a Saturday morning solely to corner me. I considered locking my door and turning off the lights, but I knew them. If I did not show up, they would come here. They would pound on my apartment door. They would make a scene in the hallway until my neighbors called the police. And then they would tell the police I was mentally unstable and they were just worried parents. I had seen them do it before with a cousin who tried to cut ties. I had to control the venue. I put on a blazer. It was armor. I brushed my hair back tight. I checked my bank app. The trust balance was still 0. The disbursement was stuck in the final verification stage. I was technically still living paycheck to paycheck, but they did not know that. I walked into the Gilded Oar at 12:30 sharp. They were already seated at a table by the window, backlit by the marina. They looked like a catalog advertisement for a happy, successful family. Gordon was wearing a polo shirt and a cashmere sweater draped over his shoulders. Elise was in beige linen. Kendall was wearing oversized sunglasses and typing furiously on her phone. As I approached, they stopped moving. It was synchronized, like birds on a wire. "Ariana!" Elise cried out, standing up to hug me. She smelled of expensive floral soap and tension. "We were so worried when you did not answer." "I am fine, Mom," I said, stiffening in her arms. "I was working." "On a Saturday?" Kendall asked, lowering her sunglasses. Her eyes were puffy, but her makeup was flawless. That is so sad. Ari, you need to learn to live a little, especially now. She winked. I sat down. The waiter appeared instantly, hovering with the anxiety that radiated off my father. We will start with the tower, Gordon said, not looking at the menu. The seafood tower, and a bottle of the Sancerre, the expensive one. I ordered an iced tea. So, Gordon said, leaning back and clasping his hands. He had large, manicured hands. He looked at me with a benevolence that made my skin crawl. We have had a very exciting week, have we not? I took a sip of my tea. I received a letter. I said, that is all. Oh, stop it, Kendall said, reaching for a breadstick. We know it is 15 million. Uncle Marlowe. Who would have thought? He always smelled like old soup. I cannot believe he had that kind of money. He was a businessman. I said, he was family. Elise corrected softly. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Her palm was cool and dry. And family looks out for family. That is what Marlowe intended. He wanted to secure the Price legacy. I pulled my hand away to unfold my napkin. The letter was addressed to me. Mom, specifically. Gordon cleared his throat. It was a rumble of warning. Ariana, let us not get bogged down in technicalities, he said. We have been up all night crunching the numbers. Do you have any idea what the tax liability is on an estate transfer of that magnitude? The estate paid the taxes. I said. Lydia Klein explained it to me. Lydia Klein is a lawyer? Gordon said dismissively. Lawyers want billable hours. They do not care about protecting your assets. I have been speaking with our guy, Miller. He says the only smart move, the only way to protect the principal from capital gains and predatory inflation, is to move the funds immediately into a family-limited partnership. He said it like he was doing me a favor. I would be the general partner, obviously, for management purposes. Gordon continued, pouring himself water. You and Kendall would be limited partners. It shields the money. It allows us to distribute income tax efficiently, and it gives you full control. I said, it gives the family security, Elise said, her voice rising. Why are you being so suspicious? We are trying to help you. You have never managed money like this. Ariana, you manage projects. This is high finance. The seafood tower arrived. It was a grotesque display of crushed ice, lobster tails, and oysters. People at the next table turned to look. I am not moving the money, I said quietly. Kendall laughed. She picked up a lemon wedge and squeezed it over an oyster. Okay, so don't move all of it, she said breezily. Dad, stop boring her with the tax stuff. She doesn't get it. She turned to me, her face softening into a mask of sisterly intimacy. Look, Ari, she said, I know you are overwhelmed. It is a lot, but we have to talk about fairness, you know? Fairness? I asked. I have been struggling. Ari, she said, you know I have. The studio, the loans, the brand. I have been trying so hard to build something, and I just keep hitting walls. Mom and Dad have drained their savings trying to keep me afloat. I looked at Gordon. He looked away, studying the wine list. So here's the plan, Kendall said. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her purse and slid it across the tablecloth. I looked down. It was a list. It was handwritten in her bubbly, loops and hearts script. 1. Pay off Kendall's student loans, approx. $180,000. 2. Purchase Briarglen House for Mom and Dad. Pay off mortgage plus Reno budget. 3. Seed capital for Kenzen Wellness, $2 million. 4. Purchase condo for Kendall in Seaport, $1.5 million. I stared at the numbers. They totaled nearly $4 million. This is just to get us back to zero, Kendall said. To level the playing field. You would still have, like, 10 million left, which is insane for one person who lives in Seabrook Harbor. I looked up at them. They were waiting. Gordon was nodding encouragingly. Elise was dabbing the corner of her eye with a napkin, preparing for the emotional closer. I am not doing this, I said. The table went silent, the noise of the restaurant, The clinking silverware, the laughter, seemed to drop away. "Excuse me?" Gordon said. His voice was very quiet. "I am not signing over control of the trust," I said, "and I am not funding this list." Kendall's mouth fell open. "But why?" "Because it is my money," I said. "Marlowe left it to me. Not to the family. To me." Elise let out a sharp gasp. "How can you be so selfish?" she hissed. "After everything we have done for you? We raised you. We put clothes on your back. We supported you when you were nothing. And now you stumble into a fortune and you want to hoard it?" "I did not stumble." I said, "Marlowe chose me. Because he didn't know you," Kendall snapped. Her face was turning pink. "He didn't know you are a cold, boring, ungrateful little shrew." "Kendall," Gordon warned. "No." Kendall shouted. She stood up. Her chair fell backward with a crash. The entire restaurant turned to watch. "I am drowning. Ariana, I am drowning in debt. And you are sitting there with a life raft. And you are just watching me sink? How do you sleep at night?" Tears began to stream down her face. They were instantaneous and plentiful. She looked like a tragic heroine. "Sit down." "Kendall," I said, keeping my voice low, "you are making a scene." "I don't care," she sobbed. "Let them look. Let everyone see what kind of sister you are. You want to see me fail. You have always been jealous of me." I stood up. I placed $20 on the table for my iced tea. "I will consider a modest, one-time gift after the trust is fully disbursed and my own security is established." I said, "But I will not be bullied, and I will not discuss this in public again." I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard Elise's voice, loud and trembling, playing to the audience. "She is in shock. She does not mean it." Oh, my poor girl. I walked out of the restaurant and into the bright, blinding sun. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I made it to my car, locked the doors, and sat there for 10 minutes, shaking. They did not follow me. They had a bottle of Sancerre to finish. The fallout began on Monday. It started with a text from my Aunt Sarah, a woman I had not spoken to in 3 years. "Ariana, I was so heartbroken to hear about how you treated your mother on Saturday. Money is a blessing, but family is forever. Don't lose your soul for a check." Then my cousin Mike. "Nice to know you're too good for us now. Congrats on the payday." Then a second cousin I didn't even have a number for. "Uncle Gordon is devastated. You need to make this right." I sat at my desk at work, watching the messages roll in. Kendall and my parents were controlling the narrative. To the extended family, I wasn't the prudent daughter protecting her inheritance. I was the villain who had stolen the family lottery ticket and left her sister destitute. I blocked the numbers, one by one. Block, block, block. But the narrative was leaking. At lunch on Tuesday, I was heating up soup in the break room. Kevin from accounting was there, stirring coffee. He was a guy I usually joked with about the terrible office Wi-Fi. Today, he didn't smile. "So," he said, leaning against the counter, "I heard you might be leaving us soon." I froze. "What?" "Word on the street is you came into some serious cash." He said, "Must be nice." "Retiring at 33. My stomach dropped. "Who told you that?" Kevin shrugged. "Small town? Ariana? My wife's sister knows your sister. She saw the post." "What post?" Kevin looked uncomfortable. "You should probably check Instagram." I left the soup in the microwave. I went back to my desk and opened the app. I didn't follow Kendall, I had muted her years ago, but I searched for her handle. Kenzen Life. There it was. A story posted 6 hours ago. It was a black screen with white text. No names. Just a vague, weaponized poem. "The saddest betrayal comes from those who share your blood. When you build someone up, and they climb the ladder only to kick it down on your face. Greed changes people. Money reveals character. Heartbroken but still rising. Family trauma betrayal keep going." I scrolled through the comments. "Oh no, hun. Sending love. Some people are just toxic. Cut them off. You deserve so much better. Karma never misses. Babe." And then, a comment from a user named TruthSeeker88. "Is this about the sister who works at the healthcare tech place in Seabrook?" I felt the blood drain from my face. They weren't just venting, they were doxing me. I closed the browser. I needed to work. I needed to focus. But my hands were trembling. My desk phone rang. Ariana Price, I answered, my voice tight. Ms. Price, this is Lydia Klein. Lydia. Her voice was the only solid thing in my world. Tell me you did not try to authorize a transfer of $200,000 this morning. Lydia said, What? No, I haven't even received the funds yet. I know, Lydia said, but someone called the main switchboard at Hathaway and Rowe. They used a voice modulator, or maybe just a bad connection. They claimed to be you. They had your social security number, your mother's maiden name, and your previous address in Boston. They tried to set up a third-party transfer to an LLC called Price Legacy Management. I closed my eyes. Gordon, we blocked it, obviously, Lydia said. The voice verification failed. But Ariana, this is aggressive. They are not waiting for you to give it to them. They are trying to take it. What do I do? I asked. I felt small. I felt like the teenager in the photo, standing next to Marlo, waiting for someone to save me. You go dark, Lydia said. Change everything. I want you to set up a P.O. box in a neighboring town. Forward all your mail. Put a verbal password on your bank accounts. Something that has nothing to do with your family. No pet names. No birthdays. I will, I said. And Ariana? Lydia paused. Upgrade your physical security. If they are willing to commit wire fraud, they are willing to show up at your door again. I hung up. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a fugue state of administrative panic. I drove to the next town over, a place called Oakhaven, and rented a P.O. box. I called my bank and set a verbal password. Tungsten, hard, unbreakable. I called the landlord and asked for permission to install a video doorbell. He agreed, sounding annoyed, when I got home that evening. The apartment felt different. It wasn't a sanctuary anymore. It was a fortress with weak walls. I sat on my couch, laptop open, changing passwords, my email, my social media, my utility accounts. A new email pinged into my inbox. The subject line was, Thinking of you/trust advice. The sender was generic name 1234@gmail.com. I hovered over it. I shouldn't open it. I knew that. But curiosity is a poison. I clicked. There was no text in the body of the email, just an attachment. It was a screenshot. It was a photo of a document lying on a wooden table. I zoomed in. It was the first page of the Marlowe Price Trust Agreement, the page that listed the assets, the page that listed my name, and in the corner of the photo, just barely visible, was a manicured thumb with a distinctive, peach-colored nail polish, Kendall's polish. She had photographed the documents. When? How? I flashed back to the restaurant, Kendall's purse. Had she had them? No. Lydia had the originals. Then I remembered. The updates my parents used to demand. Years ago, when I first moved out, I had left a box of old papers at their house, birth certificates, old savings bonds. Had there been something in there? No. The trust was new. Then it hit me. The mail. Before I set up the P.O. box. Before I knew about the trust. Hathaway and Rowe must have sent a preliminary notice. A pre-verification letter. It must have gone to my parents' address if that was still listed as my permanent residence on some old database Marlowe used. They had opened my mail. They had known for weeks. The dinner. The surprise. We heard exciting news. It was all theater. They had the documents. They knew the exact terms. The email was a warning. We have the proof. We can leak this. If they leaked the document, everyone would know. Not just the family friends, but everyone. My boss, my neighbors, the world. I would be a walking target. I grabbed my phone. I didn't think. I just reacted. I dialed home. Elise answered on the second ring. Hello? Her voice was cool, innocent. You opened my mail. I said, Ariana. She said, you sound upset. You opened a legal document addressed to me. I said, that is a federal crime. Mom, you took photos of it, and now you are emailing them to me from burner accounts? I have no idea what you're talking about, Elise said. But since you called, Gordon wants a word. There was a rustling sound. And then my father was on the line. The game is over. Ariana, Gordon said. His voice was devoid of the breathless charm he used for his updates. You tried to steal from me today. I said, you tried to authorize a transfer. Lydia knows. I was trying to correct a mistake. Gordon said, that money does not belong to you. You are a child. You have no concept of stewardship. Marlowe was senile when he wrote that trust. We are going to challenge it if you do not cooperate. You can't challenge it. I said, it is irrevocable. We can challenge your competency. Gordon said. The room went cold. Excuse me? We have logs. Ariana, he said. Years of them. Times you were overwhelmed. Times you were depressed. We can paint a picture of a young woman who is mentally fragile, a young woman who needs a conservatorship to protect her from herself. You wouldn't, I whispered. Gordon laughed. It was a dry, barking sound. You owe this family, he said. We sacrificed our lives for you and your sister. We are not going to let you walk away with our retirement because of a clerical error. You are threatening me. I said, I am parenting you. He said, don't make us handle it another way. Do the right thing. Sign the partnership agreement. We will manage the money. You will get a monthly allowance. It is for your own good. I hung up. I stared at the phone. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped it on the rug. Competency. They were going to gaslight me legally. They were going to try to Britney Spears me. I stood up and walked to the window. The harbor was dark. The lights of the boats bobbed in the black water. I had been afraid of losing my family. I had been afraid of the conflict, but as I looked at my reflection in the glass, I realized the fear was gone. It had been replaced by something colder, something harder. They wanted a fight. They wanted to paint me as unstable. I walked to the kitchen and pulled a knife from the block. I wasn't going to use it. I just wanted to feel the weight of it, to feel something sharp and real. I put the knife down. I went to the hall closet and pulled out a fresh notebook. I sat down at the table and wrote the date at the top of the page. Incident log, 1. Unauthorized access of mail. 2. Attempted wire fraud, impersonation. 3. Harassment via digital channels. 4. Extortion/threat of conservatorship. I wasn't going to be the victim. I was going to be the project manager. I was going to document every single step of their destruction. And when they came for me, and I knew they would come, I would be ready. The office of Noah Brandt looked exactly like what I expected a private investigator's office to look like, which was to say, it looked like a dentist's waiting room from the 1990s. There was beige carpet, a ficus tree that had been dead for at least 3 months, and a smell of stale coffee and toner. Noah himself was different. He was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with the sharp, hurried energy of a man who spent too much time looking at screens. He didn't wear a trench coat. He wore a hoodie and expensive sneakers. I sat in the chair opposite him, my hands folded in my lap. I felt ridiculous. People like me, project managers with 401s and cats, did not hire private investigators. You were right to come to me, Noah said, spinning a laptop around so I could see the screen. You asked how they knew about the trust before the letter arrived. I found the leak. He tapped a key. A photo of a woman appeared. She was middle-aged, with frosted hair and a name tag that read, Darlene Miller. Noah said, she is a clerk at the probate court in Briar Glen. She has been there for 20 years. She handles the digitization of old records. I don't know her. I said, no, Noah said, but your sister does. Or rather, your sister's high school friend does. I pulled Darlene's social connections. She is the aunt of a woman named Jessica Vane. Jessica Vane was the maid of honor at your sister's first wedding. I stared at the screen. Jessica. I remembered her. She was loud, mean, and fiercely loyal to Kendall. Darlene was approached 3 months ago. Noah continued. It looks like a casual inquiry at first. Someone asking if there were any old files on Marlowe Price. Darlene did a search. She found the trust maturity date. She flagged it. She likely passed the info down the chain to Jessica. Who passed it to Kendall? So they were hunting. I said, they were prospecting. Noah corrected. They were looking for loose change in the family couch cushions, and they found a gold bar. But here's the interesting part. Darlene didn't just look up the date. She accessed the file 6 times in 2 weeks. That is not casual curiosity. That is monitoring. I felt a cold prickle at the base of my neck. They had been watching the calendar, counting down the days to my birthday. Can we prove it? I asked. We can prove she accessed the records, Noah said. But proving she told Kendall is harder without a subpoena. But we know. And now you know that this wasn't a surprise to them. This was a scheduled event. I left Noah's office with a headache that throbbed behind my eyes. The fog of confusion was lifting, revealing the machinery beneath. My family hadn't just reacted poorly to my good fortune. They had been waiting for it. They had probably spent the money in their heads months ago. The next morning, the proposal arrived. It came via email, attached as a PDF, with a professionally designed cover page. The Price Legacy Initiative, a strategic partnership. I opened it. It was 20 pages long. It was filled with buzzwords like synergy, generational wealth, and holistic asset management. It had been drafted by a financial advisor in Briar Glen, someone I vaguely recognized as a member of my father's golf club. The core of the proposal was simple. I would transfer 80% of the trust's principal into a limited liability company. The LLC would be managed by a family board. I scanned the organizational chart on page 5. Managing member, Kendall Price. Board advisor, Gordon Price. Silent partner/funding member, Ariana Price. I was the bank. Kendall was the CEO. The document outlined Kendall's salary as managing member, $250,000 a year, plus a discretionary bonus. It outlined the investment strategy, which seemed to consist entirely of buying real estate in markets where Kendall wanted to vacation and funding her Ken Zen wellness brand. It was polished. It was confident. It was predatory. I printed it out just to have a physical copy for my files. Then I wrote a reply. Dear Kendall, Mom, and Dad, I have received the proposal for the Price Legacy LLC. I am declining this offer. I will not be transferring any funds to a shared entity, nor will I be funding any positions for family members. This decision is final. Please do not send further proposals. Ariana. I hit send. I expected a phone call. I expected screaming. Instead, I got silence. The silence lasted for 24 hours, on Thursday morning. I walked out of my apartment building to go to work. The air was crisp, smelling of salt and pine. I walked to my assigned spot in the carport. My car was sitting low. I stopped. I tilted my head. All 4 tires were flat. I walked closer. They weren't just flat. They were shredded. Long, jagged gashes ran along the sidewalls. The rubber hung in ribbons. I stood there, my car keys in my hand, staring at the violence of it. This wasn't a nail in the road. This was a knife. This was rage. I looked around the carport. It was empty. The morning sun glinted off the windshields of the other cars, all untouched. I walked to the manager's office, the property manager. A tired man named Mr. Henderson looked up from his coffee. My tires were slashed. I said, all of them. He blinked. Slashed? Here? We don't get that kind of trouble here. I need to see the security footage. I said, there is a camera right above the recycling bins. It points at my spot. Mr. Henderson grimaced. Ah, the camera. What about the camera? It has been on the fritz, he said. We have a work order in. It hasn't been recording since Tuesday. I looked at him. Since Tuesday. 2 days after I walked out of the restaurant. I called the police. An officer came, took a report, and shrugged. Without video or a witness. It is just vandalism. Ma'am, he said. Probably kids. Kids don't slash 4 tires on a specific car and leave the rest. I said, do you have enemies? He asked. I thought of the proposal. I thought of the Legacy LLC. Yes, I said, I think I do. I took an Uber to work. I spent the day looking over my shoulder. Every time a phone rang, I jumped. That evening, Elise called. I debated not answering, but I needed to hear their voices. I needed to gauge the temperature. Ariana! Elise cried the moment I picked up. Her voice was high, trembling, pitched at a frequency that usually meant she wanted something. What is it, Mom? I asked. I was standing in my kitchen, the lights off, watching the street. It is Kendall, Elise said. She is having an episode, a severe anxiety episode. She hasn't stopped crying since she got your email. She can't breathe. Ariana, she is hyperventilating. I listened. I could hear rustling in the background. She is devastated. Elise went on. She put so much work into that proposal. She was trying to build a bridge, and you slammed the door in her face. You are so cold. How did you get so cold? I am not cold, I said. I am just saying no. You are hurting her. Elise sobbed. You are doing this to her on purpose. You want to see her fail. Then I heard it. It was faint, muffled, as if the phone had been lowered slightly but not covered. Tell her she is killing me. It was Kendall's voice. It wasn't the voice of someone hyperventilating. It wasn't the voice of someone in the throes of a panic attack. It was calm. It was direct. It was a director giving a note to an actor. Tell her she is killing me. A chill went through me that was colder than the ocean wind. She is right there, isn't she? I asked. She is feeding you lines. Elise gasped. How dare you? She is lying on the floor. She is... I hung up. I sat in the dark. My tires were slashed. My mother was performing a script written by my sister. They were not going to stop. I called Noah Brandt. I need you to dig deeper. I said, into what? Noah asked. Into the past. I said, I want to know if this is new. I want to know if they have always been this way. And I just didn't see it because I was too close. Noah called me back 3 days later. Can you come to the office? He asked. His voice was different this time. It lacked the professional detachment. He sounded unsettled. I left work early. I told my boss I had a migraine. It wasn't a lie. My head had been pounding for a week. When I sat down in Noah's office, he didn't spin the laptop around. He pushed a physical file folder across the desk. It smelled of dust and old paper. I went to the courthouse archives in Briar Glen. Noah said, I was looking for anything related to the family finances, bankruptcies, liens, that sort of thing, but I found something else. He tapped the folder. Open it. I opened the folder. Inside were photocopies of legal documents. The header read, Petition for Guardianship of the Estate. I scanned the names. Petitioners, Gordon Price and Elise Price. Subject, Ariana Price. I looked at the date. It was 15 years ago. I was 18 years old. They tried to get guardianship over you? I asked, confused. But I was an adult. I was healthy. Read the affidavit. Noah said, I turned the page. There was a statement signed by my father. The subject, Ariana Price, has demonstrated a lack of financial maturity and a susceptibility to external influence. She is unable to manage her own affairs due to emotional instability. We request control of her financial interests to protect her future. I stared at the words, emotional instability. I was 18. I was a straight-A student. I had just been accepted to college on a partial scholarship. I worked at a bookstore on weekends. I was the most boring, stable teenager in Briar Glen. Why? I whispered. Why would they do this? I didn't have any money. Noah leaned forward. Did you? He asked. Think, Ariana, did you have anything? An inheritance from a grandmother? A savings bond? I shook my head. No, nothing. Noah pointed to a line at the bottom of the petition. Asset schedule. Pending insurance settlement. I froze. The car accident. I said, when I was 17, I had been a passenger in a friend's car. We were rear-ended by a delivery truck. I had whiplash, a broken wrist. It wasn't life-threatening. There was a settlement? I asked. There was a structured settlement offer. Noah said, from the trucking company, $50,000, not millions. But for an 18-year-old, it was a fortune. I never saw it. I said, because the guardianship was rejected. Noah said, look at the last page. I turned to the back, a stamp in red ink. Denied. The judge threw it out. Noah said, The judge noted that there was no medical evidence of incapacity. He saw right through it. They were trying to declare you incompetent so they could control the 50 grand. I felt sick, physically sick. I remembered that year. I remembered my parents telling me the insurance company was fighting it and that I probably wouldn't get anything. I remembered them telling me to just focus on school. They lied. I said, "They didn't just lie." Noah said, "They tried to legally erase your autonomy. They were willing to put on public record that you were unstable, just to get their hands on $50,000. I closed the folder. My hands were shaking. This reframed everything. The favoritism toward Kendall wasn't just because she was prettier or more charismatic. It was because she was useful. She was the one who played the game. I was the one who worked, the one who saved, the one who had assets they wanted to harvest. I wasn't a daughter. I was livestock. I stood up. I took the folder. "Thank you, Noah." "Ariana," Noah said, his voice serious. "If they tried this for 50,000, what do you think they will do for 15 million? I walked out into the sunlight, but the world looked gray. I felt a profound, hollowing grief. It was the death of hope, the tiny secret part of me that still believed they loved me, deep down, finally curled up and died. I went straight to Hathaway and Rowe. I didn't have an appointment, but the receptionist saw my face and buzzed me through. Lydia Klein was on the phone, but she hung up when she saw me. "Ariana?" she asked. "What happened?" I told her about the guardianship. I told her about the tires. I told her about the phone call. Lydia listened, her face turning into a mask of granite. "I was afraid of this," she said quietly. She opened a drawer in her desk and pulled out a heavy wax-sealed envelope. "This is the addendum," she said. "The one you said I couldn't see until disbursement? I am making an executive decision." Lydia said, "You need to know what you are dealing with." She broke the seal. She pulled out a letter written on the same heavy bond paper as the first one. "My dearest Ariana, if you are reading this, it means the money is yours. It also likely means the vultures are circling. I have watched your parents for years. I saw what they did when you had your accident. I saw the paperwork. I saw the greed in Gordon's eyes when he thought no one was looking. I am leaving you this money not just to enrich you, but to free you. They will try to take it. They will use guilt. They will use your sister. They will tell you that you owe them. You owe them nothing. You were the one who watered yourself when they refused to hold the can. I have built in a clause, Clause 7A. If you are coerced into transferring more than 10% of the principal within the first year, the trust triggers an automatic freeze and an independent investigation. Use this. Tell them about it. It is your shield. Be brave. You are stronger than they are. You have to be." Marlowe. I read the letter twice. Marlowe had known. He had known about the guardianship attempt. He had been watching from the shadows, silently furious on my behalf. Clause 7A. I said, "It freezes the money?" "It locks it down," Lydia said. "If they force you to sign something, the bank won't release the funds. It is a poison pill for them. I will remember that." I said, "When I got home, there was a man standing by my mailbox." I stopped, my hand gripping my pepper spray. It was Trent Hale, Kendall's boyfriend. He looked terrible. He was a nice enough guy, a personal trainer with big shoulders and a soft face. But today he looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "Trent?" I asked. He jumped. "Ari? Hey, what are you doing here?" "I needed to talk to you," he said, looking around nervously. "Kendall doesn't know I'm here. If she knew, she would kill me." "Come inside," I said. He stood in my living room, wringing his hands. "Look, Ari, I don't know what is going on with the money," he said. "I don't care about the money. But you need to know what she is saying." "What is she saying?" "She is telling people you have something on them," Trent said. "Not just the money. She thinks you found something. A box? A file? She calls it the leverage." I frowned. "I don't have any leverage." "She thinks you do," Trent said. "She told me you are holding it over their heads to torture them. She says you are blackmailing them. That is insane. I said. Trent looked at me, his eyes pleading. Ari, she is obsessed. She stays up all night talking to your dad. They are planning things, legal things, but also other things. She keeps saying, "We have to discredit the source." Discredit the source. I repeated. She means you. Trent said. She wants to make you look crazy. She wants to make you look like a criminal. She told me to. She asked me if I knew anyone who could plant something in your car. I felt the blood drain from my face. Plant what? Drugs, Trent whispered, or stolen goods. I told her no. I told her I wouldn't do it. That's why I came here. I'm scared. Ari, she isn't herself. She is exactly herself. I said, you are just finally seeing it. Trent left 10 minutes later. He looked like a man fleeing a burning building. I locked the door. I engaged the deadbolt. I wedged a chair under the handle. Discredit the source. They were going to frame me. I spent the night going through my own memories. I tried to remember the box Trent mentioned. What did I have? I had my childhood photos. I had my report cards. I had the rejection letter from the guardianship that Noah gave me. Wait. I went to my closet. I pulled down the plastic bin where I kept my tax returns. At the bottom of the bin was a stack of papers I had taken from the house when I moved out. Just random things. I sorted through them. Old birthday cards. A program from my high school graduation. And then, a blue envelope. I opened it. It was a letter from an attorney, addressed to Gordon Price. It was dated 20 years ago. Settlement negotiation. I read it. It was dense legalese, but the gist was clear. It was about a property dispute. My father had been accused of encroaching on a neighbor's land in Briar Glen. He had settled out of court, but attached to the letter was a handwritten note from my father to the lawyer. Just pay them. I don't care where the money comes from. Take it from the girls' college fund accounts. We can put it back later. The girls' college fund. Kendall and I never had college funds. They always told us they couldn't afford to save for us. They told us we had to take out loans. But we did have funds, and he had drained them to pay off a neighbor so he wouldn't look bad in the neighborhood. This was the old thing. This was the secret. He had stolen from us before. I put the letter in a Ziploc bag. This was ammunition. The next day, the attack moved from the personal to the professional. I was in a meeting with the development team when my boss, Sarah, knocked on the glass. She looked pale. Ariana, can I see you in my office? I followed her. The HR director, a woman named Linda, was sitting there. Please close the door, Sarah said. Ariana, Linda began, folding her hands on the table. We received a complaint this morning via our anonymous ethics hotline. My heart started to hammer. The complaint alleges that you have been engaging in financial misconduct. Linda said, specifically, that you have been using company-vendor relationships to launder personal funds and that you are currently under investigation for wire fraud. That is a lie, I said. My voice was steady, but my knees were shaking. The complaint included an attachment. Linda said, it looks like a subpoena. She slid a piece of paper across the desk. I looked at it. It was a forgery, a bad one. It was a cut-and-paste job using the header from a generic court document and my name. This is fake, I said. My family is trying to hurt me. I inherited money, and they are trying to extort me. When I refused, they started this campaign. Sarah looked at me with concern, but Linda looked at me with liability in her eyes. Ariana, we have to take every allegation seriously, Linda said, especially in a fiduciary role like yours. We have to open an internal review. Are you firing me? I asked. No, Linda said, but we are placing you on administrative leave. Paid, pending the investigation. We need you to hand over your badge and your laptop. I stared at them. I had built this career for 10 years. I was the reliable one. I was the one who stayed late. I was the one who fixed everything. And in 5 minutes, a single email from my sister had dismantled it. I handed over my badge. I handed over my laptop. I walked out of the building carrying a cardboard box with my personal mug and a potted succulent. I sat in my car in the parking lot. I didn't cry. I was done crying. I looked at the box on the passenger seat. They had slashed my tires. They had tried to declare me incompetent. They had stolen my college money. And now, they had taken my job. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Kendall. "Heard you have some free time now. Maybe we can finally meet and talk about the proposal? It doesn't have to be this hard. Ari." I stared at the screen. The smiley face emoji at the end was the final insult. I didn't reply. I started the car. I wasn't going to meet them. I wasn't going to negotiate. I drove straight to Noah Brandt's office. Noah looked up when I walked in. He saw the box. "They got to your job?" he asked. "They got to my job." I said. I put the box down. I pulled the Ziploc bag with the college fund letter out of my purse. I pulled out the guardianship file. I pulled out the log of the tire slashing. "I am done, Noah," I said. "Done running?" "Done being their daughter," I said. I sat down. "I want to file a restraining order," I said. "I want to file a civil suit for harassment. I want to file a criminal complaint for identity theft regarding the wire fraud attempt. And I want to send a cease and desist to every single person in Briar Glen who has texted me." Noah smiled. It was a grim, sharp smile. "Now you are talking," he said. "They want a war." I said, looking at the evidence of their betrayal spread out on the desk. "They think I am the beige paint. They think I am weak." I picked up the photo of me and Marlo. They are about to find out exactly who I am. Disbursement day was quiet. There were no balloons, no oversized checks, no confetti cannons. There was just the hushed, climate-controlled silence of the conference room at Hathaway and Row, the smell of fresh coffee, and the scratching of a fountain pen against thick paper. I sat at the mahogany table, signing my name, Ariana Price, Ariana Price, Ariana Price, with each signature. I felt a layer of skin shedding. The person I had been, the reliable daughter, the project manager who apologized for taking up space, the sister who made herself small so Kendall could feel big, was dying in this room. Lydia Klein sat across from me, her hands folded. She waited until the final document was signed, notarized, and slid into a folder before she spoke. "The funds have been wired," Lydia said. "The transfer will be reflected in your new account within the hour. $15,420,000. I nodded. It felt abstract. It was a number on a screen, not a reality I could touch yet. "There is one final item," Lydia said. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a sealed envelope. It was yellowed with age, the edges slightly curled. "The addendum," she said. Marlo's instructions were clear. "You are to read this only after the funds are irrevocably yours." I took the envelope. My name was written on the front in that same spidery, blue ink I had seen on the back of the photograph. I broke the seal. Inside was a 3-page letter. "My dear Ariana, if you are reading this, you have survived the gauntlet. I assume your parents have already made their play. I assume they have tried to make you feel guilty, or incompetent, or selfish. Gordon always was good at making other people pay for his expensive tastes. You are likely wondering, why you? Why not split it? Why not give it to the family? I chose you because of a Tuesday in August, 19 years ago." I paused. 19 years ago, I would have been 14. I was visiting your parents in Briar Glen. The letter continued. "There was a dinner party, your mother's pearl necklace, the one she claimed was an heirloom, though I happened to know she bought it at an estate sale, went missing." I remembered. The memory hit me like a physical blow. The shouting, the police being threatened. I saw Kendall take it. Marlo wrote, "I watched her slip it into her pocket and then drop it into your backpack in the hallway. I watched her do it with a cold, practiced efficiency that chilled me. And then, I watched your parents find it. I watched you try to defend yourself. I watched you cry. And then I heard your father say the words that sealed your fate and mine. Stop lying, Ariana. We know you are jealous of her. You are always the problem." They knew you didn't take it. I saw it in their eyes. They knew Kendall was the thief. But it was easier to blame the quiet one than to confront the golden one. It was easier to sacrifice you to keep the peace. I almost stepped in, but I realized that if I saved you then, they would just find another way to break you. So I decided to save you later. I decided to give you the one thing that would allow you to walk away from them forever. Independence. I originally intended to leave you $2 million. That night, I changed my will. I amended the trust to leave you the entirety of the estate. I am not paying you for your pain. Ariana, I am refunding the cost of your childhood. I put the letter down. I was crying. Silent. Hot tears that dripped onto the polished wood of the table. He had seen, he had known, all these years. I thought I was crazy. I thought I was the problem. But Marlo had seen the truth. I was the scapegoat, the designated villain in a play written by my parents to protect their star. There is a final clause in the addendum. Lydia said gently. She pushed a tissue box toward me. I wiped my face and looked at the last page. Safeguard Clause 7A. In the event that the beneficiary is coerced, pressured, or manipulated into transferring sums exceeding 10% of the principal within any 30-day period, the trustee is authorized to immediately freeze all distributions and initiate an independent welfare check and competency evaluation of the beneficiary, to be conducted by court-appointed officials, not family physicians. He built a wall, Lydia said. If they force you to sign a check, the bank locks the doors. It is a fail-safe. He knew. I whispered. He knew they wouldn't stop. He knew. Lydia agreed. And now, so do you. I left the office with the letter pressed against my chest inside my jacket. I felt lighter, but also sharper. The fog of guilt was gone. I didn't owe them anything. They had sold me out for a pearl necklace. I drove back to Seabrook Harbor. I wanted to sit by the water. I wanted to breathe. But when I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment complex, I saw them. There were 3 cars, Kendall's SUV, my Aunt Sarah's sedan, and a black town car I didn't recognize. They were standing by the entrance to my building. Kendall, Aunt Sarah, my cousin Mike, and a tall man in a clerical collar. Reverend Miles Doran, the pastor of the church in Briar Glen where we had gone on Christmas and Easter. My stomach turned over. It wasn't a visit. It was a raid. I considered backing out. I considered driving straight to the police station. But I was done running. I had $15 million and the truth in my pocket. I parked the car. I got out. I hit record on the voice memo app on my phone and slipped it into my blazer pocket. Ariana! Kendall cried out when she saw me. She rushed forward, her arms open. She looked exhausted, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Wearing no makeup, it was the distressed sister costume. We have been waiting for hours, she said, trying to hug me. I stepped back. What is this? I asked. We are here because we love you, Aunt Sarah said, stepping forward. She looked pained. Ariana, honey, we are so worried. You have cut everyone off. You are acting so erratic. I am acting like someone who had her tires slashed. I said, that is what we mean, the Reverend said. His voice was deep, soothing, a professional instrument of comfort. Paranoia, isolation. These are signs of a spirit in distress. Ariana, I looked at the Reverend. Hello? Miles, I didn't know you made house calls 2 hours away. Your parents asked me to come. He said, they are heartbroken. They are terrified for you. They believe you are under the influence of dark forces. Dark forces? I asked. You mean my lawyer? I mean greed, the Reverend said softly. I mean the corruption that comes with sudden wealth. It has clouded your judgment, child. You are pushing away the only people who truly know you. Kendall stepped in, wiping a tear from her cheek. Ari, please, she said. We are not here to fight. We are here to help. We want to take the burden off you. She reached into her oversized tote bag and pulled out a document. We talked to a specialist. She said, a stress management consultant. He said the best thing for you right now is to disconnect, to go to a retreat, just for a few weeks, to clear your head. And the money? I asked. The document is a temporary power of attorney. Kendall said. It just lets Dad and me handle the logistics while you are gone. We can deal with the taxes, the lawyers, the scary stuff. You just go to the spa. You just breathe. We will take care of everything. I looked at the document. General Durable Power of Attorney. It wasn't limited. It was a blank check. If I signed this, they could transfer the money, sell my car, and admit me to a facility. I looked at Kendall. She was looking at me with wide, pleading eyes, but her hand was gripping the pen so hard her knuckles were white. I am not signing that. I said, Ariana, think about your soul, the Reverend said. Think about the commandment. Honor thy father and thy mother. I am honoring them. I said, by not having them arrested for fraud. Kendall's face hardened. The mask slipped. Just for a second. You are not well. Ariana, she said. Her voice was flat. You are mentally unwell. Look at you. You look like a ghost. You are seeing enemies where there is only family. If you don't let us help you, we are going to have to take steps to protect you. Is that a threat? I asked. It is a promise, Aunt Sarah said, crossing her arms. We cannot let you destroy yourself. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I held it up. The red recording bar was pulsing. I have recorded this entire conversation. I said, I have recorded you trying to coerce me into signing a legal document under the guise of a religious intervention. Kendall froze. The Reverend took a step back. If you do not leave my property in 2 minutes, I said, I am calling the police, and I will play this recording for them. Kendall stared at me. There was no love in her eyes. There was no concern. There was only the cold, hard calculation of a predator who realized the prey had teeth. You will regret this, she whispered. You will die alone, Ariana, and you will deserve it. Get out, I said. They left. It was a shuffle of defeat, but I knew it wasn't over. As Kendall got into her car, she didn't look back. She got on her phone. I went upstairs and locked the door. I collapsed on the floor. I shook for an hour. The next day, Noah Brandt called me. I found the lawyer. He said without preamble, Which one? The one Kendall is shopping for. Noah said, I have a buddy who works as a paralegal at Stern and Halloway. It is a firm that specializes in elder law and guardianship. Guardianship. I said, Kendall had a consultation with them yesterday. Noah said, she is pitching a narrative. She claims you have a history of undiagnosed bipolar disorder. She claims you are in a manic episode triggered by the inheritance. She claims you are spending recklessly and are a danger to yourself. I haven't spent a dime. I said, it doesn't matter what the truth is. Noah said, it matters what they can file. She is trying to get an emergency ex parte order. That means a temporary conservatorship without you even being in the room. Can she do that? If she has a doctor sign off on it. Noah said, does she know a doctor? I thought about it. Her wellness brand. She knew naturopaths. She knew chiropractors. Did she know a psychiatrist? She knows people. I said, Noah sighed. We need to get ahead of this. You need a clean bill of health. Go to a psychiatrist. A real one. Get an evaluation. Get it on the record that you are sane, competent, and rational. Do it today. I will. I said. I hung up. Then my other phone rang. The work phone. It was Linda from HR. Ariana. She said. Her voice was stiff. We have concluded our internal review regarding the anonymous complaint. And? We found no evidence of financial misconduct, she said. The forensic audit was clean. The vendor relationships are sound. I let out a breath I'd been holding for days. So I can come back? Linda paused. Ariana, she said. While the financial allegations were unfounded, the investigation raised concerns about the distraction this situation is causing. We feel that the workplace environment has been compromised. Compromised? We are willing to offer you a severance package, Linda said, 3 months' pay, and a neutral reference. But we think it is best if we part ways. I sat there, holding the phone. I was the victim of a smear campaign, and my company was firing me because the smear was too loud. I understand. I said, I will take the severance. I hung up. I was unemployed. I was under siege. I was alone. That night, I slept with my phone on my chest, the screen casting a blue light on my chin. Every time the refrigerator hummed, I jumped. Every time a car drove by outside, I thought it was them coming to take me away. I was exhausted. My bones felt like lead, but I couldn't sleep. If I slept, I might miss the sound of the lock picking. 2 days later, the subpoena arrived. A process server caught me at the mailbox. He was a bored-looking man in a windbreaker. Ariana Price? Yes, you have been served. He handed me a thick packet of papers. I opened them in the elevator. Superior Court of Massachusetts. Plaintiff. Kendall Price. Defendant. Ariana Price. Cause of action. Unjust enrichment. Breach of implied contract. Family reimbursement. I read the filing in my kitchen. It was a work of fiction. It alleged that the money used to fund my education, my car, and my life from the age of 18 to 25 was not a gift, but a family loan derived from shared assets that I had verbally agreed to repay. It alleged that I had undue influence over Marlowe Price in his final years. I hadn't seen him in a decade. It demanded $5 million in reimbursement and punitive damages. It was legally weak. Even I knew that verbal contracts for millions of dollars didn't hold up, but then I saw the exhibits. Exhibit A, Bank Statement of Ariana Price, dated 2018. Exhibit B, Credit Card Statement of Ariana Price, dated 2020. Exhibit C, Student Loan Payoff Receipt. They had my statements. Not just the old ones, recent ones. I called Lydia. They have my records. I said, actual bank statements. How did they get these? Lydia was silent for a moment. Then I heard the furious clicking of her keyboard. Read me the transaction reference number on Exhibit A. She said, I read it. That was obtained through a data broker. Lydia said, her voice turning icy, it is illegal to sell that specific level of detail without a court order or authorized access. Someone impersonated you to a data aggregator, or what? Or they have a keylogger on your devices, Lydia said. Or they guessed your security questions. Mother's maiden name. I said, name of first pet. Street you grew up on. They know all the answers. Lydia said, Ariana, this is identity theft. This is federal. So we countersue? I asked. No, Lydia said. We destroy them. I am filing a motion to dismiss. But I'm also filing a cross-complaint for abuse of process, fraud, and invasion of privacy. And I'm sending a referral to the district attorney. Do it. I said, but Ariana, Lydia warned, this will get ugly. If we involve the DA, your parents could go to prison. Kendall could go to prison. Are you ready for that? I looked at the subpoena. I looked at the lie about the verbal agreement. They are trying to put me in a cage. Lydia, I said, if the only way to stop them is to put them in one first, then yes, I am ready. I needed one more thing. Noah had said the guardianship paperwork was rejected because of inconsistencies. Marlowe's letter mentioned the pearl necklace incident, but I needed something tangible. I needed the smoking gun that proved the pattern. I needed the contents of the filing cabinet in the study at the Briar Glen house. I knew that cabinet. It was where my father kept everything, the deeds, the tax returns, and the incidents file. I had seen it once when I was a kid. A red folder. I drove to Briar Glen on a Tuesday morning. I knew Kendall would be at her yoga class. I knew my father would be at the club. My mother would be home. But I could handle Elise. I pulled into the driveway. The house looked perfect. The hydrangeas were in bloom. It was a beautiful facade covering a rot. I used my key. They hadn't changed the locks. Arrogance. They thought I wouldn't dare. I walked in. The house was quiet. I went straight to the study. The filing cabinet was locked. I grabbed a letter opener from the desk. I wasn't being the reliable daughter anymore. I jammed the opener into the lock and twisted. It didn't open. Ariana? I turned. Elise was standing in the doorway. She was wearing a silk robe. She looked older than she had a week ago. Her face was drawn, her eyes rimmed with red. What are you doing? She whispered. I want my records. Mom, I said, I want my birth certificate. I want my social security card. And I want the file on the car accident. You shouldn't be here, she said. She didn't scream. She sounded scared. "Open the cabinet," I said. "You don't understand," she said. "We did it for you. We always did it for you." "For me?" I laughed. It was a harsh, jagged sound. "You tried to declare me incompetent to steal $50,000. You slashed my tires. You got me fired. We are protecting the family," she cried. Stepping forward, she blocked the cabinet with her body. She was trembling. "You are destroying us. Ariana, you are tearing this family apart over money. It isn't about the money." I said, "It is about the truth. Move, Mom." "No," she said. She spread her arms. "You are not looking in there." I stepped closer. We were face to face. I could see the fear in her eyes. But it wasn't fear of me. It was fear of exposure. Then a shadow fell over us. "If you open old things, you will regret it." Gordon was standing in the hall. He was still wearing his golf cleats. He held a club in his hand. A putter. He wasn't holding it like a weapon, but he wasn't holding it like a sportsman either. He was holding it like a barrier. "Dad," I said. "Get out of my house," he said. His voice was very quiet. It was the voice he used when he was about to break something. "I want the truth." I said, "The truth is what we say it is." Gordon said, "We made you. We can unmake you. You think a few $1 million makes you powerful? You are nothing without us. You are a frightened little girl who needs her daddy to tell her what to do." I looked at him. I looked at the man I had spent my life trying to please, the man whose approval I had craved like oxygen, and I saw nothing. He wasn't a patriarch. He was a bully. He was a small, greedy man terrified that the world would find out he was a fraud. "I am not frightened," I said, "and I am not yours." I stepped back. I didn't need the papers in the cabinet. I had seen their faces. I had seen the desperation. "I am going to leave," I said, "but not because you told me to. I am leaving because there is nothing here for me." I walked past him. He didn't move. He just watched me, his knuckles white on the golf club. As I reached the front door, Elise called out, "Ariana, please, just sign the papers. We can go back to how it was. We can have dinner. We can be a family." I opened the door. "We were never a family." "Mom," I said, "we were a business, and I am liquidating my shares." I walked out. I drove down the street, past the manicured lawns and the perfect houses. I realized something then. The money, the $15 million, wasn't the prize. It never was. The prize was the narrative. They wanted the money, yes, but more than that, they wanted to control the story. They needed me to be the unstable ones so they could be the caring ones. They needed me to be the failure so Kendall could be the success. They needed me to be the villain so they could be the heroes. If I was competent, successful, and independent, their entire worldview collapsed. If I didn't need them, they ceased to matter. I pulled over to the side of the road. I took a deep breath. I picked up my phone. I dialed Lydia. "File the cross-complaint." I said, "Are you sure?" Lydia asked. "I am sure." "And Lydia?" "Yes." "Add account for emotional distress, and request a forensic accounting of their finances for the last 20 years. If they want to talk about family reimbursement, let's see where the money really went." I put the phone down. The war was on, and for the first time, I wasn't fighting to survive. I was fighting to win. Noah Brandt placed the document on the desk between us. It was not a photocopy this time. It was a high-resolution scan of a handwritten draft. The ink faded but legible. This was attached to the original guardianship petition. Noah said, "It was never filed with the court. It looks like a note your father wrote to the attorney." Explaining his reasoning, I picked it up. The handwriting was unmistakable. Sharp, slanted, aggressive. It was dated the summer before I left for college. The subject is easily influenced by outside parties. Gordon had written, "She lacks the killer instinct necessary for asset preservation. She is book-smart, but not fully capable of navigating the real world. We need to hold the reins, or she will give it all away to the first person who is nice to her." I stared at the phrase, "not fully capable." I was 18. I had just graduated valedictorian. I had spent that entire summer working 2 jobs to save for textbooks, because they told me they couldn't help. I wasn't incapable. I was inconveniently independent. He wasn't describing me, I said quietly. He was describing the version of me he needed to exist so he could feel superior. And look at the date, Noah said. August 20th. 2 weeks before you moved out. They weren't trying to protect you from the world. Ariana, they were trying to stop you from entering it. As long as you were under their roof, they had control. The moment you packed a bag, they panicked. I felt a cold clarity settle in my chest. They hadn't loved me. They had managed me. And when management failed, they tried to liquidate the asset. I took the paper, set up the meeting. I told Lydia an hour later, I want them here. I want them on the record. The conference room at Hathaway & Rowe was designed to intimidate. It was all glass and steel, suspended 40 floors above the city. I sat at the head of the table. Lydia was to my right. My parents sat opposite us. They looked small against the backdrop of the skyline. Elise was wearing a pastel cardigan that seemed too cheerful for the occasion. Gordon was wearing his club blazer, but his face was gray. We are here to discuss the cross-complaint, Lydia said, opening a binder. But before we proceed to the discovery phase, Ariana has a question regarding this document. She slid the draft letter across the table. Gordon didn't pick it up. He just glanced at it, his jaw tightening. Where did you get this? He asked. It doesn't matter. I said, I want to know why you wrote it. I was 18. Dad, I was a child. Why did you tell a lawyer I was incompetent? Elise let out a sob. It was a wet, ragged sound. We were scared, she cried, reaching for a tissue. You were so young. Ariana, you were going off to that city, to that school with all those people. We just wanted to make sure you had a safety net. A safety net that required you to legally declare me an invalid? I asked. It was legal strategy, Gordon snapped. His voice cracked like a whip. You don't understand how the world works. We were trying to secure the insurance money so it could grow. For the family. For the family. I repeated, just like the college fund was for the family? Just like the pearl necklace was for the family? Gordon's eyes narrowed. He looked at me with a mixture of loathing and recognition. You were never like us, he said. The words came out slow and poisonous. Even when you were little, you sat in the corner and watched. You judged us. You always thought you were better than us. I didn't think I was better. I said, I thought I was alone. You were cold. Gordon said, Kendall has a heart. She makes mistakes, but she feels things. You are a calculator. You just tally up the score. And now you have the money, and you think you have won. I stood up. My hands were flat on the table. I haven't won anything. Dad, I said, I have lost my parents, but at least now I know I never really had them. Gordon stood up too. He leaned over the table. You will regret this, he said. You will end up exactly where you belong, alone, with your money and your cats, and no one to mourn you when you die. We are done here, Lydia said, cutting the air with her voice. Please remove yourselves from the premises before I call security. They left, but the air in the room remained heavy, charged with the static of my father's hate. He didn't just favor Kendall. He actively despised me because I was the witness to his mediocrity. 2 days later, the war shifted fronts. I was at home, organizing my files. When my phone started buzzing, it was a barrage of notifications. I looked at the screen. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I didn't have active accounts on most of them, but I was being tagged. Justice for Kendall's stolen legacy. Family betrayal. I clicked on a link sent by a cousin. It was a post on a crowdfunding site, a GoFundMe. Help Kendall reclaim her stolen life. The photo was a picture of Kendall and Marlo, taken years ago, Photoshop enhanced to make them look closer than they ever were. But it was the text that stopped my heart. My sister, Ariana Price, has manipulated our elderly uncle into cutting me out of the family trust. She used lies, isolation tactics, and emotional abuse to steal an inheritance meant for both of us. Now, she is living in luxury while our parents are on the brink of bankruptcy trying to fight for justice. I have a letter from Marlowe that proves his intent. But Ariana has buried it with high-priced lawyers, and there, attached to the post, was an image. It was Marlowe's letter, the addendum, but it was redacted. Black bars covered the paragraphs about the pearl necklace. Black bars covered the section about my parents' greed. Black bars covered the explanation of why I was chosen. All that was left were disjointed sentences that, when strung together, looked like a confession of guilt. I amended the trust dramatically. Redirect funds. Witnessing a specific incident, she had taken the evidence of her own corruption and edited it into a weapon against me. I scrolled down. The comments were a sewer. What a monster. Sue her into the ground. Money is the root of all evil. I called Lydia. She leaked the letter. I said, but she doctored it. I see it. Lydia said, she sounded tired. This is defamation. Ariana, clear cut. But she is smart. She phrased it as her truth. She is raising money. I said, she has raised $5,000 in 2 hours. Lydia said, she is crowdsourcing her legal fees. She is manufacturing moral outrage to pay for her harassment of you. I felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't just about the money anymore. Kendall was building a brand. She was the victim hero, and I was the villain. She was monetizing our trauma. Then, my banking app pinged. Security alert. New authorized user request. I opened the app. Someone had tried to add a user to my primary checking account. The name on the request was Kendall Price. The address used was my old address in Boston. The social security number was mine. But 2 digits were transposed. They are getting sloppy. I whispered. They were desperate. The crowdfunding was a long game. They needed cash now. They were trying to brute force their way into my accounts. I took a screenshot. I sent it to Noah. I sent it to Lydia. Add it to the pile. I wrote, the next morning. Lydia filed the papers. Price. We filed for a permanent protective order. We filed a civil suit for defamation, fraud, identity theft, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We attached the log of the tire slashing. We attached the fake subpoena. We attached the doctored letter. It was a nuclear strike. Kendall's lawyer, a strip mall shark named Barry Scheck, responded within hours. Offer of settlement. Lydia read it to me over the phone. They are offering to drop the lawsuit for family reimbursement and issue a public statement clarifying that the dispute has been amicably resolved, Lydia read. In exchange for what? I asked. In exchange for a one-time payment of $3 million to Kendall Price and a written statement from you acknowledging that the family supported you during your formative years. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was a dark, hollow laugh. She wants $3 million to stop hitting me? I asked. Essentially. Lydia said, tell them no. I said, tell them I will spend $15 million on lawyers before I give her 3 cents. I hung up. I needed air. I put on my coat and walked down to the harbor. The wind was whipping off the water, cold and biting. I sat on a bench, watching the gray waves chop against the pylons. Excuse me? I jumped. Standing 10 feet away, hands deep in his pockets, was Trent Hale. He looked worse than the last time I had seen him. He had lost weight. His eyes were shadowed. Trent, I said, standing up. If you are here to deliver another message from Kendall, save it. I am not, he said. He looked over his shoulder, scanning the parking lot. I broke up with her. I relaxed slightly. When? 2 days ago, he said. When she posted the GoFundMe. I couldn't take it anymore. Ari, the lying, the performance. She sat there editing that letter, laughing about how she was going to destroy you. She is not right. I nodded. I know. He reached into his pocket. I took this when I left, he said. He held out a small silver USB drive. I copied her desktop. I don't know if it will help, but I couldn't leave you hanging. She made me do things. Ari? What things? She made me call your office, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. She wrote the script. She stood right there while I made the anonymous complaint. She said if I didn't do it, I didn't support her vision. I took the drive. It felt heavy in my hand. "Why are you giving me this?" I asked. "Because I saw the texts between her and your parents." Trent said, "They don't talk about you like a daughter. They talk about you like a target." He turned and walked away. He didn't look back. I went straight home. I plugged the drive into my laptop. I opened the folder labeled messages_backup. It was a transcript of a group chat. Team Price, participants, Kendall, Mom, Dad. I started reading. April 12th. Kendall. She got the letter. Darlene confirmed she picked it up. Dad. Don't panic. We stick to the plan. We pressure her on the taxes. Mom. I called her. She sounded suspicious. We need to be careful. April 15th. Kendall. She said no to the house. What a bitch. It wasn't heat. It was casual. It was routine. They discussed destroying my life with the same emotional weight as planning a grocery list. I printed everything, every page, every timestamp. This wasn't just evidence. This was an autopsy of my family. The next week was a blur of legal violence. We submitted the text messages as evidence in the protective order hearing. The judge granted it immediately. Kendall, Gordon, and Elise were barred from coming within 500 feet of me or contacting me by any means. The settlement offer was withdrawn. Kendall went silent on social media, but the silence in the digital world was replaced by the noise in the real world. My extended family began to fracture. I received a letter from my Aunt Sarah, the one who had stood in my driveway with the Reverend Ariana. It read, "I saw the post Kendall made. I was so angry, but then Mike showed me the full letter from Marlo that your lawyer released to the family. I didn't know. I didn't know about the necklace. I didn't know about the college fund. I am so ashamed. I let myself be used. Please forgive me." I put the letter in a drawer. I didn't answer it. Apologies were easy when the truth was undeniable. Where was she when I was being called a thief? Then there were the others, the cousins who doubled down. "You think you are so special." One text read, "Aunt Elise is in the hospital with high blood pressure because of you. You are killing your parents for money." They didn't care about the truth. They cared about the tribe. And I had been excommunicated from the tribe. I sat in Noah's office again. He had one final piece of the puzzle. "You know," Noah said, spinning a pen on his desk. "Marlo didn't just ignore Kendall." "What do you mean?" "I dug into the trust records." Noah said, 10 years ago, Marlo offered to pay for Kendall's tuition, full ride, undergrad and master's." I sat up. "He did?" "Yes," Noah said, "but there were conditions. She had to maintain a 3.5 GPA. She had to submit receipts for all expenses. And she had to attend a drug and alcohol awareness course because she had a DUI when she was 19. I never knew about a DUI. I said, "Gordon buried it." Noah said, "But here's the kicker. Kendall refused the money. She wrote Marlo a letter saying his conditions were insulting and controlling. She said she didn't need his charity if it came with strings." I stared at the wall. So the narrative that Marlo ignored her is a lie. Noah said, "He offered to help her. She rejected it because she couldn't handle accountability. She chose the struggle. Ariana, or rather, she chose to let your parents pay for her struggle because they didn't ask for receipts." It all clicked. The favoritism wasn't just something that happened to Kendall. It was a transaction she participated in. She traded her independence for their unconditional, enabling support. I was the threat because I had broken the contract. The court date for the civil suit was set for June 1st. I hired a crisis communications consultant. Her name was Elena, and she cost $500 an hour. "It is necessary," Lydia insisted. "Kendall has poisoned the well. If you want to work in this industry again, you need to clear your name publicly." I hated it. I sat in Elena's office while she drafted a press release. Ariana Price responds to false allegations. Evidence of fraud and harassment submitted to Superior Court. It felt dirty. It felt like I was becoming them, fighting in the mud. But then I remembered the text messages. Make her feel unsafe. I wasn't fighting for attention. I was fighting for survival. 3 days before the hearing, I received a notification. Voice memo from unknown number. They were blocked, but they had used a burner. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the play button. I shouldn't listen. I should just forward it to Lydia. But I had to know. I pressed play. There was a moment of silence. Then, Kendall's voice filled the room. It wasn't the screaming voice. It wasn't the crying voice. It was the voice from the restaurant. The sweet, sugary, terrifying voice. "Hey, sis," she said. "I know you're listening. You always were a good listener." She paused. I could hear her breathing. "You think you have won because you have the texts," she said. "You think you have won because you have the lawyers, but you haven't won, Ari. Because even if you keep the money, you lose. You lose Mom. You lose Dad. You lose everyone. You will be the rich girl in the tower, and we will be the family that you abandoned." Her voice dropped an octave. "You can end this any time," she whispered. "Just sign the check. Just give us our share, and we can all go back to pretending we love each other. Isn't that what you want? To be loved?" She laughed. It was a soft, chilling sound. "See you in court. Beige girl." The recording ended. I sat in the silence of my apartment. Isn't that what you want? To be loved? For 33 years, the answer had been yes. I had twisted myself into knots, swallowed my pride, and erased my own needs just to get a crumb of their affection. But as I looked at the file on my desk, the tire slashing, the fraud, the texts, the betrayal, I realized the answer had changed. I didn't want to be loved, not by them, not at that price. I wanted to be free. I forwarded the memo to Lydia. "Add this to the evidence pile." I wrote, then I went to the closet. I picked out my suit for court. Navy blue, sharp, professional. I wasn't the beige girl anymore. I was the plaintiff, and I was ready to burn the house down. The Superior Court of Massachusetts smelled of floor wax and stale adrenaline. It was a sterile, wood-paneled box designed to contain the messiness of human conflict, but as I sat at the plaintiff's table next to Lydia Klein, I knew that no amount of judicial procedure could contain the rot of the Price family. Kendall was on the stand. She had dressed for the part. Gone were the designer sunglasses and the sharp, architectural blazers. Today, she wore a soft, oatmeal-colored cardigan and flats. Her hair was pulled back in a loose, slightly fraying ponytail. She looked small. She looked fragile. She looked like a sister who had been wronged. Ariana was always difficult, Kendall said softly into the microphone. She looked at the jury, or rather, the judge, since this was a bench trial, with wide, watery eyes. Even when we were little, she was very cold, very calculated. She didn't like to share. And how did her behavior change after the death of Marlowe Price? Her attorney, Mr. Scheck, asked gently. "She changed completely," Kendall said, wiping a phantom tear from her cheek. "She cut us off. She stopped coming to dinner. She started listening to these new friends, people who told her that her family was the enemy. She became paranoid." "Paranoid?" Mr. Scheck asked. "Yes," Kendall breathed. "She started accusing us of terrible things, vandalism, theft. She lost touch with reality. We tried to help her. We tried to get her into treatment, but she just attacked us." I sat there, my hands clasped so tightly that my fingernails dug crescents into my palms. It was a masterclass in projection. Every sin she had committed, she was pinning on me. She was rewriting history in real time, and she was doing it with the terrifying conviction of a narcissist who believes her own lies. Elise was next. My mother walked to the stand like a woman walking to the gallows. She looked older than she had at the house. Her hands trembled as she took the oath. "Mrs. Price," Mr. Scheck said, "did you ever try to control your daughter's finances?" "Only to protect her," Elise whispered. Her voice wavered. She is not like Kendall. Kendall is street smart. Kendall knows how the world works. Ariana is naive. We were terrified that someone would take advantage of her. So the guardianship petition from 15 years ago, Mr. Scheck said, that was an act of love? Pure love. Elise sobbed. We just wanted to keep her safe. I looked at my mother. I looked at the woman who had stood in the doorway and blocked me from the filing cabinet. Pure love. It was a grotesque distortion of the word. Your witness, Mr. Sheck said. Lydia stood up. She didn't walk to the podium. She stood at our table, arranging her papers with a surgical precision. Mrs. Price, Lydia said, her voice cool and carrying to the back of the room. You claim you acted out of love. You claim you wanted to protect Ariana from people who would take advantage of her. Yes. Elise sniffled. Lydia picked up a document. Then can you explain? Lydia asked. Why you forwarded Ariana's private home address to a man named Trent Hale with the instruction, go scare her? Elise froze. The sobbing stopped instantly. I never. Lydia held up the paper. Exhibit D. Lydia said, a text message transcript dated April 20th. Sent from your phone number. Go scare her. Make her realize she needs us. Elise stared at the paper. Her mouth opened and closed. And this one, Lydia continued, picking up another sheet. Exhibit E. A text from your husband to your daughter Kendall. I drove by her place. Car is in the port. Tires look expensive. That was sent 4 hours before Ariana's tires were slashed. Elise looked at the judge. She looked at Gordon. She looked like a trapped animal. We were just venting. Elise stammered. It was a stressful time. Venting? Lydia asked. Is filing a false police report venting? Is attempting to access a bank account with a forged signature venting? Objection! Mr. Sheck shouted. Sustained on the police report, the judge said, peering over his glasses. But the witness will answer regarding the bank account. I didn't do that. Elise whispered. No, Lydia said. You didn't. But the IP address that accessed the bank login page traces back to the Wi-Fi router in your home in Briar Glen. Lydia let the silence stretch. It was heavy and suffocating. No further questions. Lydia said, then, it was Gordon's turn. My father walked to the stand with his chest puffed out. He was angry. I could feel it radiating off him like heat. He didn't look at me. He looked at the judge as if he were a subordinate employee. Mr. Price, Lydia said, skipping the pleasantries, you have testified in your deposition that you believe Ariana is mentally incapacitated. I do, Gordon said. His voice was a rumble. She is delusional. And you base this on what medical evidence? Lydia asked. I am her father, Gordon snapped. I don't need a doctor to tell me when my daughter is broken. I have watched her for 30 years. She has always been weak. Weak, Lydia repeated. Yes, she can't handle pressure. That is why Marlowe set up the trust the way he did. Oh? Lydia asked. How did Marlowe set up the trust? He wanted it to be managed, Gordon said, leaning forward. He knew she couldn't handle the full amount. That is why he wrote about the imbalance. He wanted to correct the imbalance of her capability. I saw Lydia's eyes flash. It was the look of a predator spotting a limping gazelle. The imbalance of her capability? Lydia asked softly. That is a very specific phrase. Mr. Price, it is what he wrote, Gordon said, waving a hand. In the letter, the addendum. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Price, the judge said, the addendum to the trust was sealed. The only version released to the family was heavily redacted. The phrase imbalance of capability does not appear in the redacted version. Gordon stopped. He blinked. The color drained from his face, leaving it the color of wet ash. I must have heard it, Gordon stammered. Ariana must have said it. Ariana has not spoken to you since the disbursement. Lydia said, the only way you could know that phrase is if you read the unredacted original, and the only way you could have read the original is if you accessed Ariana's private legal correspondence. Did you open her mail? Mr. Price? Lydia asked. Her voice was thunder now. Did you steal federal mail, or did you access her email illegally? I have a right to know, Gordon shouted, slamming his hand on the witness stand. The wood cracked under his palm. It is my family's money. I have a right to know what that senile old man wrote about me. The courtroom erupted. Mr. Sheck was on his feet, shouting objection. The bailiff stepped forward. But it was too late. The mask had slipped. The benevolent patriarch was gone. replaced by the thief who had stolen his daughter's college funds and was now trying to steal their adulthood. The judge banged his gavel. It sounded like a gunshot. "Order!" the judge roared. "Mr. Sheck, control your client." Gordon sat back, breathing hard. He looked at me then. There was no love in his eyes. There was only pure, unadulterated hate. The judge looked at the papers before him. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "I have heard enough," the judge said. He looked at Kendall, then at Gordon, then at Elise. "This court finds no evidence to support the plaintiff's claims of unjust enrichment or family reimbursement," the judge said. "The case is dismissed with prejudice." Kendall let out a gasp. "Furthermore," the judge continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous register, "based on the testimony and evidence presented regarding unauthorized access to banking systems, identity theft, and harassment, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation." "Criminal?" Elise shrieked. "I am also issuing a permanent restraining order," the judge said. 5 years, no contact, direct or indirect. If you text her, if you email her, if you send a carrier pigeon, you will be arrested. Do I make myself clear?" "Crystal," Lydia said. The judge stood up. "Court is adjourned." Kendall didn't move. She sat at the plaintiff's table, staring at me. It was a look I would carry with me for the rest of my life. It wasn't anger. It was the look of someone whose entire reality had just shattered. She looked at me as if I had reached into her chest and pulled out her heart. She looked at me as if I were the abuser. I stood up. My legs felt shaky, but I forced them to hold me. "Let's go," Lydia said. We walked out of the courtroom. The hallway was crowded. Relatives, friends, and the curious onlookers who follow family court dramas had gathered. Kendall came out a moment later, when she saw the audience. The switch flipped. She crumbled. It was a performance worthy of an Academy Award. She let out a wail that echoed off the marble walls and collapsed into Elise's arms. "She ruined us!" Kendall screamed, sobbing into her mother's shoulder. "She stole everything. She sent me to die alone." The crowd murmured. Phones were raised to record. "Oh, look at her," my Aunt Sarah whispered loudly. "Look at Ariana. She is ice. She doesn't even care." I walked past them. I walked past my sister, who was weeping on the floor. I walked past my father, who was staring at the wall. I walked past the cousins who were shaking their heads at my cruelty. I didn't stop. I didn't defend myself. I didn't say, "She is lying." I didn't say, "They slashed my tires." I just kept walking, because I realized, finally, that you cannot explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Their narrative was their shield. If they admitted I was the victim, they had to admit they were the villains, and they would never, ever do that. I pushed through the heavy double doors and into the sunlight. My phone rang as I reached the car. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Ms. Price?" a voice said. "This is Charles Hathaway, senior partner at Hathaway and Rowe." "Mr. Hathaway," I said, "I am with Lydia. We just won. I heard." Charles said, "Congratulations. But there is one more thing." "What thing?" "Marlowe left a secondary instruction." Charles said, "It was a contingency, a separate account." I frowned. "A separate account?" He called it the Family Reconciliation Fund. Charles said, "It contains $1 million, but it has strict conditions. It can only be activated by you. And it can only be dispersed if your parents and sister sign a formal admission of wrongdoing and agree to enter binding mediation." I stood by the car door, the wind whipping my hair across my face. Marlowe tried to give me an out. I realized he knew I would feel guilty. He knew that even after everything, I would want to save them. He gave me a tool to buy their peace, but only if they were willing to be honest. "Do you want to activate it?" Charles asked. "The offer expires in 48 hours. I need to think about it." I said. I drove to Briar Glen. Lydia advised against it. Noah advised against it. But I had to do it. I had to offer them the lifeline, not for them, but for me. To know that I had tried one last time. I pulled into the driveway. The house looked dark. The curtains were drawn. I knocked on the door. Elise opened it. She was still wearing her court clothes. Her makeup was smeared. "Ariana?" she whispered. "You came back. May I come in?" I asked. She stepped aside. They were in the living room. Gordon was pouring a drink. Kendall was sitting on the sofa, staring at her phone. They looked up when I entered. The silence was thick and toxic. "I have an offer." I said. I didn't sit down. Gordon snorted. "An offer? You took everything, and now you have an offer." Marlo left a separate fund. I said, $1 million. It is for you." Kendall's head snapped up. Her eyes narrowed. "1 million?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "but there is a condition. You have to sign a statement admitting to the fraud. You have to admit you slashed the tires. You have to admit you lied to the court, and you have to agree to leave me alone forever." Silence. Gordon laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. "You want us to confess?" he asked. "You want us to sign a paper saying we are criminals?" "I want the truth, Dad." I said, "If you sign it, you get the money. You can pay your debts. You can keep the house." Kendall stood up. She walked toward me. She didn't look wounded anymore. She looked feral. "You think you can buy us?" she hissed. "You think you can wave a check in our faces and make us bow down to you?" "It isn't about bowing down," I said. "It is about accountability." "Accountability?" Kendall screamed. The sound tore through the room. "Who are you to talk about accountability? You were born to serve us. Ariana, that was your job." She was shouting now, spitting the words. "You were the boring one," she yelled. "You were the sponge. You were supposed to absorb the misery so I didn't have to. That is why we kept you around, to take the blame, to be the contrast. And you ruined it. You ruined the script." I looked at her. There it was. The ugliest truth. I wasn't a sister. I was a utility. I was the designated loser in a rigged game. Essential only because my failure made her success look brighter. I looked at Elise. She was weeping. But she didn't stop Kendall. She didn't defend me. I looked at Gordon. He was drinking his scotch, watching me with cold indifference. I took a deep breath. "Thank you, Kendall," I said quietly. "For what?" she sneered. "For making this easy." I took my phone out. I dialed Charles Hathaway. "Mr. Hathaway," I said, "I am declining to activate the reconciliation fund. Let it expire." "What?" Kendall shrieked. "No, you can't." I hung up. I turned to them. "I am not your bank," I said. "I am not your sponge. And I am not your daughter anymore." "Ariana." "Wait," Elise cried, reaching out. $1 million. We need it. Please." Gordon stood up, his face red. "You ungrateful little—" I walked out. I didn't run. I walked. I walked down the hallway where I had been blamed for the necklace. I walked past the kitchen where I had been told I was boring. I walked out the front door and closed it firmly behind me. I heard screaming from inside. I heard the sound of something breaking. Glass. Maybe. But it sounded like it was coming from a great distance. I got into my car. I locked the doors. I drove away from Briar Glen. I drove past the sign that said, "Welcome to our community." I drove onto the highway, merging into the stream of taillights heading north. I was alone. I had no parents. I had no sister. I had no childhood home to return to. But as I drove, I noticed something. My hands, gripping the steering wheel, weren't shaking. The knot in my chest, the one that had been there for 33 years, was gone. I turned on the radio. Music filled the car. I had paid a high price for this freedom. It had cost me my history. It had cost me the illusion of love. But as the ocean came into view, vast and open and indifferent, I knew it was a bargain. I was the reliable one. I was the steady one. And for the first time in my life, I was relying on myself. Thank you for listening to Ariana's story. This was a journey into the dark heart of a family system where love was conditional and roles were assigned at birth. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to Revenge Stories. We explore the gritty, realistic side of justice, where the ending isn't always a fairy tale, but it is always earned. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Leave a comment below with your location and your thoughts on Ariana's final choice. Did she do the right thing by walking away from the reconciliation fund, or should she have given them one last chance? Let's talk in the comments. Stay safe, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is just being happy without them.